What's up everyone, Progg here, and welcome to another episode of Progg Theory. In this episode, I'd like to talk about a theory I have from Urth of the New Sun. Now this theory surrounds the conversation that Severian has near the end of the book with Odilo, Thais, and Pega. The claim is that Odilo discovered Severian was the Autarch by eavesdropping on the conversation with Iada. I'm going to contend, however, that Pega and Thais discovered Severian was the Autarch before the conversation with Iada even occurred. Severian introduces himself to the trio as the Hipparch Severian of the Black Tarentines. This is a lie by omission. Odilo proceeds to tell a story. It was late one night, sir, and my father was making his final rounds when he saw someone attired in the Fulligan habiliments of a Carnifex. Odilo's story concerns Severian, of course, and Severian reacts. I smiled, recalling the house azure. The dark woman, that's Thais, shot me a significant glance and ostentatiously covered her lips with her hand, but I had no desire to cut Odilo's recital short. It appears Severian misinterprets Thais' shock as fear. An ostentatious hand raise would have been out of character for Thais. His next thought, which had better been his first, sir, as he often owed to my mother and me as we sat by the fireside, was that this Carnifex had set out on some sinister mission, supposing himself apt to pass unobserved. It was vital, sir, as my father understood at once, to learn if his errand served Father Aniri or some other. My father therefore approached him as boldly as if he'd a cohort of the Hastari at his back, and asked his business straight out. Thais murmured. If he had been set upon some evil errand, he would have owned it, no doubt. This is a very strange thing for Thais to say. Maybe it was a satire on Odilo's father. I find it more likely it was a satire on Severian. Thais could be connected to Thea, and she could be claiming that Severian hasn't owned up to his own evil errands. Regardless, Odilo continues. My dear lady, I don't know whom you may be, as you have refrained from informing us even when our exalted guest obligingly made us privy to his own patrician identity. But you obviously know nothing of artifice, nor of the intrigues carried out daily and nightly among the myriad hallways of our house absolute. My father was well aware that no agent entrusted with an irrevealable commission would disclose it, however abrupt the demand. He hazarded that some involuntary gesture or fleeting expression might betray treachery, were such intended. This is highly ironic, considering Thais may be the only one that sees through Severian's artifice. She herself is more of an artificer than Odilo and Pega. Odilo argues that involuntary expressions can betray identity. Severian smiled when he was mentioned in the story. Severian asks if the intruder was masked. Odilo says he couldn't have been, and Pega chimes in. I know, Pega broke in. I've seen his portrait and his bust. They're in the Hypogeum Absititius, where the Autarch put them when she married again. He looked like he'd cut your throat whistling. Okay, so the Autarch Severian's appearance is being recalled in a somewhat negative manner. Then, Pega was examining me. He never had children, did he? Pega clearly suspects Severian is the Autarch Severian here, or at least that he is related to him. She may have been led on by Thais. Odilo says Severian fathered no children. Pega adds, legitimate children, but he could have covered any woman in the House Absolute, just by cocking an eyebrow. Exultants, all of them. I think Severian is being dishonest here. In classic Severian fashion, he's mutating Pega's suspicion into infatuation, and inserted a compliment that Pega probably never said. Severian's death-like identity remains with him, giving him away. Severian goes on the defensive. But wouldn't the cutthroat have to be my grandfather? Severian the Great would be 80 or more if he were alive, surely. Whom should I ask about him, Pega, my mother or my father? And don't you think there must have been something about him after all, for him to command so many fine chatelaines when he'd been a torturer in his youth, even if the Autarch took a new husband? To fill the silence that followed my little speech, Odilo said, "That guild is abolished, sir, I believe." "Of course you do. That's what people always believe." The whole of the east was black already, and the motion of our improvised raft had grown perceptibly more lively. Pega whispered, "I didn't mean to offend, Hipparch. It's just that whatever it was lost in the breaking of a wave." Wolf wanted us to gloss over this. Pega said something here Severian didn't want us to hear. Something about his identity? No, I don't think so. Something about his deathly visage. His response applies to both the cut-off dialogue and the assumed dialogue. "No," I told her. "You're right. He was a hard man, from all I know of him, and a cruel one too. At least by reputation, though perhaps he wouldn't have owned to that." Wait a second. Thais murmured. If he had been set upon some evil errand, he would have owned to it, no doubt. Very interesting that Severian copies that wording. After this, Odilo seems still oblivious. The trio board Ziada's ship, and the women allegedly worry about Severian. He makes it on board, however. Something important happens in between the lines. Pega had begun to talk to Odilo in a low tone that was nearly a whisper, and although I could hear her voice above the slap of the waves against our side, I could not tell what was said, nor was I sure I wished to hear it. I will tell you what she definitely said, because Severian won't. Severian is the autarch. Thais may have also told her about Severian's evil errands while Severian wasn't on board, and about the new sun and so on. This is why. The old sailor had been rummaging under the little poop deck that covered the last couple of ells of the stern. "Haven't but 4 blankets," he announced. Odilo interrupted Pega to say, "Then I must do without. My clothing is dry now, and I should not be comfortable." The sailor tossed a blanket to each of the women, and one to me, keeping the last for himself. I put mine in Odilo's lap. "I'm not going to sleep for a while. I have some things to think about. Why don't you use it until I'm ready for it? When I get sleepy, I'll try to take it without waking you." Thais began. And though I was not meant to, I saw Pago elbow her so sharply she had to catch her breath. Odilo hesitated. I could hardly make out his drawn face in the fading light, but I knew he must be very tired. At last he said, "That is most kind, sir. Thank you, sir." Severian might have misunderstood the interaction between Thais and Pega as a love triangle with him. Classic Severian. It seems to me the trio are judging Severian, now sure of his identity, ascertaining whether he is a threat or whether he should live. This wouldn't be out of theme for Urth. I suspect Odilo and Thais are against it. Pega is Severian's sole advocate, despite seeing Severian as death personified. She resembles Dorcas in this way. But what's the significance? Odilo eavesdrops or the trio finds out by deduction. Either way, the sleeper represents the autarchy. I think it may have to do with the judgment of Severian's character, as we are called back to his deathly visage, and possibly by Thais, to his evil errands. But also, this is Severian's final lie. Several times throughout the story he lies about his identity. This time it doesn't work. The lie is seen through, and the true Severian is revealed. This could be Wolf's way of communicating to the reader that they can do the same. It could also be a final moratorium on Severian's arc, or it could be his judgment. What he hides in this conversation on the boat is extremely important. Personally, I believe he was judged, and the sacrifice he made in becoming the new sun was deemed adequate punishment for his crimes. But hey, that's just me. That's all for this theory. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.